Some questions around valuations and AI valuations in the residential market. What's your view on them?
I suppose, first off, our views might slightly align and our views might slightly differ. I was expecting this one to be a recording that we were going to do ourselves. So I wasn't quite sure that everyone was going to be online. So I was expecting that if I threw a few punches here, that you just edit them out before you put it live. But now it's live and you won't be able to edit out any jabs that I do have. But in fairness, not too many jabs. I think we're pretty much aligned in terms of where we think AI and AI valuation might go. From a residential point of view, I definitely think AI valuations is well suited because the way residential valuations work, because it's based on comparable evidence, and that's the more data that you can actually have, the better your valuation is going to be. But I don't see that there's going to be an end to professional valuers. I think data and information is very valuable. I think a lot of people say information is power, but realistically, without knowing what to do with that information, it's pretty much worthless. And I think we chatted offline before in regards to Zillow and the mistakes that Zillow have made over in America in terms of over relying on their AI tool. And I put out a YouTube video on it there recently, but basically, Zillow used their AI tool to go off and purchase over 7,000 units all around America, and not really paying attention to what was actually happening to the market. And they bought in locations where they saw demand was increasing, and therefore they had a hope that because demand or searches were increasing in those locations, that the values would go up. And they were mistaken, and now they're in a very difficult position. And I'll give you like a practical story to this in regards to how this demand was kind of coming about. When I first arrived in New York, a friend of mine booked a cabin up in upstate New York. It was about a 4-hour drive. 4-hour drive seems a huge amount to me coming from Ireland. You can get across the country in less than 4 hours, but in America, 4 hours is not that long of a drive. So we drove up, we stayed in this cabin for a few days. Him and a few more friends stayed for a few weeks longer and worked up there. I got a frantic phone call about 2 weeks later saying that he was ready to buy this house that he was Airbnb. And I told him to hold on a minute. You can't just buy a house that you're just Airbnb and working in. But he'd almost agreed a deal with the owner. I checked out on Zillow. The Zillow AI evaluation tool had actually priced it a slightly bit higher. So therefore, he thought he was getting a good deal. But I went off as a good valuer and started to do a little bit of digging. And what I found out was that a huge amount of the valuations or the increase in value had happened over the last year or so. And that was mainly because a huge amount of people were leaving the city, and there was a huge amount of demand for Airbnb within these small towns just outside cities. And therefore, valuations were creeping up because of work from home and also because of Airbnb. I then dug into the councils or the local counties' minutes from their last meeting, and I discovered that actually locals had been complaining about the amount of Airbnbs, and they were going to start putting in rules to stop Airbnbs within this town, therefore completely wiping out the value that this property was worth. So thankfully, I talked them out of it, but I think it's important that Zillow have made a mistake over relying on valuation data from their AI tool. And I think it's always going to be important for good valuers to understand what that data is actually showing and not to be over reliant on it. You can agree with me or disagree with me on that point, but I think there will always be a need for someone to review the data and someone who actually understands the data, because Zillow hired about 1,000 odd people to do these acquisitions, and probably most of them had no experience in acquisitions or valuations.
I think it has to be seen as part of the process, any valuation tool. It's like the evolution of, the simple measuring stick to using a laser gun. We use calculators still. We use them on our phone. We use them, in doing Leaving Cert. We didn't have our mobile phones, unfortunately, when we were doing our Leaving Cert, but, we had the calculator. And I think the part of the process is evolving, and it's there to enable. I was on the IPPi and Tagova conference on Friday, and it was very much so, the trend across, got a few more people joining here. The trend across the conversation was that data is used by the valuer to enable them and not disable them. And the more you are educated within the models that are out there available and the tools that are there, they're not 100%. They're not perfect, but they will get you a lot more further down the line and save you a huge amount of time. So, Shane, is there any difference with AI in commercial values that you're seeing from both in the Irish market and the US market?
Well, I suppose just from kind of leading on from your point there in regards to time saving, I think that is probably the fundamental reason, particularly in residential, in terms of the time saving, in terms of gathering comps and putting the report together. There definitely is a time saving benefit to it that I cannot be denied, and there's the value to that, and it's definitely worth the money that we pay, your agents pay to you guys for that. In terms of commercial AI valuations, there definitely is scope for it. How wide that scope is going to be a little bit different depending on the location, because the level of data that's required to complete commercial valuation is going to be far greater than it is for a residential. And obviously leases become a major impact in terms of valuations for a property. So you can't just compare one building to another building. The lease itself could hold 50% of that value within that building alone, rather than the structure itself. And I think where it will help is because commercial valuations are way more expensive. So therefore there definitely is the ability for tech to come in and try capture some of that value, or try capture some of those fees through a tech model. Obviously a lot of funds have to do commercial valuations every quarter. During their quarterly reports, they have to constantly update their valuation report, and they need valuers to do that. And obviously if a particular valuer is valuing the same portfolio and nothing has changed within that portfolio other than maybe market conditions, it's quite easy for them to just generate a report every single quarter. But when things change within that portfolio, then the valuer needs to come in and be more detailed in regards to what's actually happening. In terms of bigger markets, you can definitely see like New York or much larger cities where commercial valuation data and AI tools will come in because there's a huge volume of data there. But if you were to look at Dublin, how easy it is to even if you collected all the data, is there enough similar units or similar types of properties that are going to give an AI enough information to create actually detailed valuations? Or will there always be a requirement for a valuer to come in and finish off those reports? I think there will always be a requirement there, for particularly in smaller locations or smaller cities or nicher commercial sectors. And I also kind of think that from a commercial valuation point of view, there is scope there for AI to come in, but it's just how it comes in or how costly it is going to be the question.
Okay, and just on that, like the AI models that are there at the moment, yes, there's multiple in the residential space. The commercial space hasn't really been tapped into, as we can see in the likes of the UK or even in the US. Australia are still pioneers, still miles ahead of us. Their geospatial frameworks that they sit on top of their databases are really impressive to the level and accuracy that they can put on a specific unit or multi-unit development. You know, you're looking at 4,000 or 5,000 properties, and they're saying the accuracy is up at 95, 98%. You know, what are your thoughts, or how could you best tell the industry from your perspective of seeing these tools? Because I know you've seen them all over the world and I know you're using them, but from an educational piece, because I do believe the educational side of it is crucial to people being able to use them and not being fearful of it. So how important has that been for you?
I think it's kind of probably important to when you look at these valuation systems or tools all over the world, every market is completely different. And if you look at the UK or you look at Ireland and you look at our property and our property title and our legal how all that kind of works, and how how historical a lot of the information is, because it dates back so far, and like our cities date back so far. And same with America, a lot of their cities and plots date back so far. But when you have a country like that built rapidly like Australia did, and a huge amount of their stock is not as old as certain cities like you would have in the US or the UK, it's a little bit easier for them, I think, to get their heads around putting in not new systems, but when they're building these systems, it's easier for them because the actual building stock or the product that they're actually looking at is a slightly bit more modern. So it's not quite as easy to kind of translate all of that from a market where their build fabric isn't as old as some of the build, or their legal fabric isn't as old as some of the major cities in Europe or some of the major cities in the US. And I think from a valuation point of view, particularly from a commercial point of view, the data, it's all well and good to have all this data at your fingertips, but again, as I said, like, it needs specialist knowledge to understand how you can unlock that data and how you can unlock the value. Like, it's the data is not going to tell you that you can increase the value of a property, particularly a commercial property, if you decide to split it up or combine multiple units or do refurb, redevelopment, or change of zoning, or all of those things that expert knowledge will tell you that this is how you increase the value of these properties. I haven't seen, or I don't know yet, a tool that's going to be able to quite do that yet, in terms of an individual site or an individual property and go, okay, right, we can increase the value of this by changing the zoning or redeveloping it or refurbishing or adding a floor or two. I don't think we're quite there at that level. I think there still is a need for expertise, but I think it will become far easier to make those decisions in terms of, is it easier to knock it down or refurb it or change of use or combine units or split out units, in terms of what's the best value. I think the tech will help make those decisions far quicker and make those decisions far easier. I think at the moment you could end up having to do multiple appraisals on each different sector and each different idea that you might have. But I think as tech grows, I think that's where the AI and valuations might end up leading, in terms of helping making those decisions for portfolio or asset managers.
Yeah, we're seeing it firsthand. People asking for tens of thousands of valuations done, and the ethical standpoint behind it. I do believe there needs to be more collaborative exercise between each of the stakeholders within the process, and that goes down from your agents, your mortgage brokers, your solicitors, and everyone within it. I do believe if they can work more collaboratively, having the information will save the time. Like, if you look at the pain points, and we've studied this in detail and looked at some research behind it of what are the pain points in the process, and highlighting the elephant in the room, it's taking you look at the average time it takes for a property to go through from advertised, for sale agreed, sold, it's too long. It's on average it's over 200 days. You then have internationals coming into the market and looking to purchase a property and realizing why it takes so long, and we're wondering why deals are falling out of bed. Yes, there is a lot of deals happening, and the transaction levels are up. Shane, if we look at your business, what tech are you using on an ongoing basis that allows you to operate, one, in the States, and two, with business back home in Ireland?
What tech am I using? I suppose when I went out on my own for Fleming Real Estate, maybe about 6 years ago or so, I kind of had it very much in my mind that tech would form a very large element of how I do my business and how I run my business. And I would always kind of keep on top of tech. And I suppose I spent a lot of time going down different pathways that perhaps didn't work when I started. Other pathways did work. And I think we met probably about 3 years ago, particularly maybe talking about tech. And at that stage, I felt that I had actually built a decent income for myself. At the time, I was about 3 odd years, maybe 4 years in business, and I had built a decent income for myself. But I had actually realized what I had done was I had created just a job for myself, and I needed to somehow strip myself out of the business and my knowledge out of the business. And I felt tech was one of the ways to do that, rather than solely being based on my consultancy or my knowledge. And I felt tech was one of the ways to do that. And I did reach out to you, and we had multiple discussions on different things. It didn't work out for different reasons, no one's fault, but it just wasn't the pathway for me. And I suppose it's kind of what I've learned is over the last kind of year or so is that perhaps these tech companies or large property companies, not tech companies, but large multi-international property companies that create this tech for their company alone, perhaps are going down the wrong path. Because I had a very interesting conversation with one guy over here, an Irish guy, Garrett Flower, who runs Park Office, and he kind of said, what is the point in building something bespoke or building something that is so tied into one particular niche or something? Why don't you take the benefit of using tech that is the expert in whatever they are, whatever you're trying to do? So I've kind of gone down the model in the last year or so of relying on Slack for team stuff, relying on Monday for project management stuff, obviously my Google Drive, Google Calendar, and also Calendly for booking appointments. And the glory of all of these systems is you can link them all together. And I think that's what I really like. And there is ways to link your property database to these to these systems as well, and let them all talk to each other. So you're getting the benefit of the best tech in that particular sector, rather than trying to build something bespoke. And obviously, from a valuation tool, using your tool, it is the best tool out there in Ireland to use, hands down. So therefore, rather than going for something that is tied into some other larger product or larger package, this is one tool that I use for valuations. And I think maybe from your guy, for Muse going forward, one way to kind of maybe grow, obviously I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, is that a lot of these systems like Slack and Monday and all those use plugins. And if you had a system that you had a plugin that could immediately plug into Slack or immediately plug into a data collection, such as like a form page that automatically created a list of valuations that a company needed to provide, and it automatically provided the dates or provided the addresses. So if I had a website where I was requesting a valuation, and they give me their name, they give me their address, and they give me their details of the property, I have an iPPi plugin as part of my website that it immediately sends that data to you guys, and it immediately automatically starts creating the report. And all I have to go in is click a few simple comparables that I feel match up and get the report out. So I think that's how I'm trying to build my kind of business in terms of using tech, that I'm using the best tech from each different sector. Like I'm using Zoom because they're the best video conferencing call. I'm not trying to build or add in something there. I'm using Canvas for design stuff and thumbnails or whatever, or graphics and stuff like that. So I'm using the best tech rather than relying on one kind of large bespoke thing for real estate. And I think that's what I've learned over the last year, is it's better to probably use the best tech within that sector and try link it all together.
Yeah, and I think the overarching theme there is very important. It's the centralization of information. So the information that you have within each of those tools is centralized. I spoke about it last week with Andrew Radigan, and it's so important to have, let's say, a CRM system, but to make sure that CRM system connects through APIs. For us, we connect through an API or property particulars with companies, and it's becoming more and more apparent now. What was 3 or 5 years in the UK where people looked for property data information to plug into the system they're using, it's the same. It's how systems interact. And I do believe the barriers are coming down with more and more companies entering collaboration or partnership agreements, whereby they're using their information, but they're using it to advance their own business. What do you find most frustrating, Shane, working in real estate? Because I definitely know there's a few elephants in the room that you want to address. We spoke yesterday.
I suppose in terms of what I find kind of frustrating at the minute, it might be obviously different things frustrate me. I try actually not to. And when I thought about this, I kind of need to get it out of my head. But I kind of think the most frustrating thing for me at the moment is it's probably stemming on from kind of lockdown, the lack of kind of face-to-face interaction anymore, and also kind of social media and media. But I think that what I find the most frustrating working in real estate or working in that industry is possibly the lack of respect that real estate agents are given. And I think we do a really good job. I think most agents out there do a fantastic job. They work for their client, they get the best value for their client and do a great job. But I think there's a huge lack of respect out there within Ireland, particularly for real estate agents and the work that they do. I think if you looked at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, respect is there. It's respect for your profession is there. And if you don't have it, it does leave a little bit of a hole. And I kind of feel that like in the last 2 years, particularly since lockdown, when you're not kind of getting that kind of face-to-face kind of gratitude from clients as much, maybe all the negative side of social media and the trolling that happens for agents is weighing on me a little bit. And I feel that's the biggest issue. I think the media don't help in regards to bringing out sociology professors and asking them about housing when they have no idea. They've never built a house, they've never got funding for a house, they've never got planning permission for a development project, they've never worked in development, and they've never worked in the industry. But however, the media bring these people out as experts and somehow have all the answers to the housing crisis. So I find that very frustrating in terms of working in the industry. And I don't blame the media. I actually probably blame like some of our bodies that are out there in terms of, I blame I blame our professional bodies in terms of them not putting out enough PR in terms of how well we're regulated and all the work that they do to make sure that agents are regulated. I think from looking all over the world, it only takes, in some countries, it only takes a few weeks to get your real estate license. Now in Ireland, it takes 2 years minimum to get your real estate license. And we are heavily regulated compared to every other country. And I think the Property Service Regulatory Authority don't put enough PR out there to protect agents within the industry. I also think the SES don't do enough in terms of PR, in terms of the housing market, and in terms of kind of standing up for developers or landlords that are getting awful abuse in recent months and years in regards to them. But they play an absolute vital role to our economy. And our economy would not survive unless we have landlords or developers. So I think some of our bodies, our professional bodies, need to stand up and be a little bit stronger and put out better PR to protect the industry and the people that actually work in the industry.
Shouldn't that come? I'm not challenging the point, but shouldn't that come from within the organizations and not? And I get what you're saying, you know, the leaders within it. But if I'm a member of, let's say, the SCSI, I know you are yourself, or the groups that are out there, this has to start within the agency to put them out on social media. Because, you know, I was having a simple conversation with my outlet about it, and, you know, the way he sold back, you know, 10, 20 years ago is completely different to how, you know, we sell today. And I think in bringing up topics such as advertising has changed, social media has changed, and they not maybe native to that specific person, but I think, and I do believe, it needs to start from within these groups and organizations, and the information has to stem from a data-driven experience. And I'm not plugging IPPi here, but I'm saying, where is the information? You know, from we know that the major portal players in this market right now also own newspapers and put a massive backdrop onto, you know, reality of what's happening. And I know that's a big statement to make, but this is what's going on. You know, you look at the reports they put out. You've got economists, you've got sociologists, you've got everyone else. You know, the way I see it is, you get people on the ground who are doing it firsthand. They need to be the ones that are putting out the message.
No, they are. And like, you know, from me, like from the last year and a half or so, I've been trying to put out that message on YouTube constantly. But I think that like, it shouldn't be up to like the individual to have to go out and do that. I think the government or the bodies that we pay fees to them every year, that they should be protecting our integrity, and they should be putting out, there should be some sort of PR behind in terms of how we're regulated, what we do, why we're professionals. Like, we're a professional organization. There should be more emphasis on the fact that we carry ourselves professionally and ethically in terms of what we do. And if we don't, we'll be held to account. I think from like the media point of view, like talking about media outlets owning some of the platforms, like I did see it got my attention when I was on the Irish Times website the other day, that they had in their sidebar housing crisis, the worst social and economic issue facing Ireland in decades. And like when I read that, I would be like, okay, well, fine, the housing crisis is really bad. And I don't mean to be kind of flippant here in terms of how bad it is affecting some people, but realistically, is that coming from like an extremely privileged place, that we as a society or as a generation now, that housing is the biggest issue? Like what was our previous generation's biggest issues? War, famine, whatever. Like I think we're incredibly privileged to be in the position that we are, that incredibly privileged that I can have a conversation with you from the other side of the world on Zoom, on a computer. Like I think we're incredibly privileged to have all those things. Fine, granted, housing is an issue, but I don't think it's all doom and gloom the way some of the media outlets are portraying. I do think that the media outlets kind of pick up all the people who are going to give out about the housing market, rather than actually probably, like, information is key here. Like what you do with information is very valuable. We've got professors who have all the information they need. Realistically, that's their job, to store information and teach information, but they don't necessarily know how to use that information. And realistically, developers and builders know how to use that information, know what's right to build, or know when to build and know how to build. And they're the kind of people who probably should be, the media should be reaching out to. Granted, probably none of them want any of the media attention that could come around with it, but they are the people that the media should actually be asking, how do you solve these questions, not sociology professors.
Yeah. And on that, how do you think tech will impact the role of surveyors, valuers in the future?
Well, I suppose in terms of like surveyors and valuers, I think probably, as we discussed or we kind of talked about, there may be less of them. They probably might still be able to do. They'll probably be able to do more valuations based on the tech that they have. So there'll be less requirements for a huge number of them. In terms of agents, because we haven't really talked about agents, you might think I'm crazy here, and perhaps you might want to use this as a soundbite when you're putting this out here. But like, I think that it's probably going to be very sad news for agents long term or medium term into the future in terms of their role, in terms of selling and buying or letting units. I have a vision. I could be totally off the wall here, but I have a vision that, like, if you're looking to buy a property, all you do is you'll log on, you'll add your details, you'll scan your ID, you'll put in your proof of funding, and you'll get a VR code that will allow you access to the property. And like, in terms of passing over data and information, right now, for me to send a package to Ireland, I have to hand over state ID. So I don't think there's going to be an issue with people if they want to go and look at a house. They're going to have to provide their ID and their funding first. I think we're going to go that direction eventually. Perhaps not in Ireland straight away, but around the world, it will go that direction. I think once you arrive in the house, you'll either use your phone or you'll be greeted by a hologram or some sort of iPad on wheels that will follow you in the house. And you'll be tracked in the house for security reasons. You'll be tracked in the house as well, but you'll be able to do it on your own. You'll be able to walk through the house. As you go through the house, you'll be able to, like, in terms of this meta universe that you can look on your phone, you'll be able to hold it up to the house and hold up to rooms, hold up to kitchens, and go, okay, well, I want to refurb this, and you'll quickly scan, go, okay, and it will give you an idea of what you can do to the kitchen, and it will also give you prices in regards to what refurbs will do. Walk into the bedroom, you want to do something to the bedroom, this will all pop up on your phone and give you ideas what you can do, and give you costs. Any questions you have on BOR, size of the property, local schools, will all be added into a bot, the way all the bots are working on the website now, and it will either answer you over the phone as you're walking through the property, or answer you as a hologram or one of these iPads that will follow you around the house. And you might call me crazy saying this.
No, I fully saw it. I saw tech there that you could basically put your phone up to a building and it was telling you everything about the building, all the information, when it was built, what the lease was, and that, you know, data sat in Ireland for too long. It sat. A few more joining here. It's sat in silos, as I mentioned, and I think it's going to allow you to become more trusted. and it's a resource there that can enable you to, you know, I was reading your man Naval Ravikant's book, and he was looking at what are the four leverages. Well, labor, capital, we have them. They're the old ways. The new leverages are you know, code and content. And I know you're a firm believer of that because it's built your brand today. You've over like 25,000 people following you on multiple different mediums, and that's credible to you. And I think that'll enable you to do more business. So, you know, it's hats off for you first pushing the barrier and breaking down the ceilings of, because it's not easy. Technology is not easy. It's a very complex tool. Having built this ourselves, we've looked at how do we enable agents within the industry. Well, I think the first thing you do is you lean into it, and you fail quick. So Shane, in terms of your, you know, top three tips, I'm throwing a curveball at you here. For agents, what do you think agents should be reliant on, or should really look to in the coming years?
I think education is absolute key. I probably spend my first bit of the morning, like every morning, trying to learn something new, either if it's reading an article in regards to property or tech or something along those lines, or even just self-development. I think you, as an agent, you have to continuously build on yourself and build on your business. I don't think you can sit on your laurels anymore, or sit on old ideas. I think you constantly have to improve yourself and improve by education. And it's not like going to college education. It's just by improving how you learn and how you think about things and how you can deliver things. I think that's probably number one that most agents probably, if they want to survive this tech kind of onslaught around the world in terms of how it's going to impact people's jobs, I think learning and adapting is probably one of the most important things. Tip two, I think while tech will have a huge impact on the industry, I think there will always be people who want to deal face to face with people. So I think customer relationships is absolute key, and developing kind of a network is like, to be honest with you, like probably most of my business is developed based through my network, and referrals are based on my network. Granted, I do get some stuff through social media, but like my social media, in terms of what I'm doing on social media, is a long-term thing. I see it as a long-term thing rather than a kind of short-term gain. But I think building your network, and if you're a new agent or an old agent, I think always trying to grow your network is important. In terms of social media and the importance of social media, like when I started Fleming Real Estate, I heavily went after Facebook. That turned into kind of like, as a business, you had to go, and to get engagement, you had to then start paying for paid posts. So I kind of walked away a little bit from Facebook. Instagram, I went heavily into Instagram, and again, after a while, that starts becoming, like, as a business, it starts becoming a paid engagement platform for business. So therefore, your reach is less. But I am really fond of Instagram, because I actually now I'm probably networking with people more on Instagram than I am with, I've done LinkedIn. I think I've met more people here face to face in New York based on connecting with them through Instagram, because we've shared certain interests. I would see that they are interested in something in real estate or whatever. I'd comment, and I'd reach out to them because we have a shared interest. And I think it's far easier to find people who might have a shared interest or a shared connection through a platform like Instagram. I don't think it's overly great anymore for general reach. In terms, I went on to TikTok for a little while, but I found that to be a time suck for myself, so I had to delete it and get it out of there, get it off my phone. But I am very kind of hopeful and reliant on YouTube. I think there's a big difference between YouTube and any other social media platform. I think if people watch one of your videos for a half an hour or 15 minutes, like if they pick up the phone or they email you, there's realistically no pitch involved in that. If they watched you for that amount of time and they're reaching out to you to ask for help on something, realistically, they've already made the decision that they're actually going to go with you no matter what. Yeah, a lot of time I do get a lot of kind of leads in from YouTube. Some of the stuff I'm just not going to be able to do, or it's not quite what I want to be doing, so I have to turn it away. But when a lead does come in that you want to work with, and when you do, generally speaking, there's no pitch involved, because they know who you are and they want to work with you. And I think that YouTube is the only platform that gives you that. I think it's the only platform that gives you kind of an ongoing reach that people can watch your videos for a year after you put it out. Like I put out a video there maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, and I just checked my phone this morning. It had about 150 views in the last 2 days. And it's a 3 or 4 month old video. You compare that to Instagram, where your engagement drops off pretty much to zero after about 48 hours on a certain post. And in terms of a video I put out a year ago on how to become a real estate agent, I put that out over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. Like I got about 20 something views on that yesterday. I'm not saying that YouTube is the golden goose for agents to get leads. I think if I was running a recruiting business and I was trying to recruit agents, I definitely have hit a gold mine with the YouTube stuff, because I probably get 1 or 2 CVs in a day from students looking to work. But in terms of leads, for me, it's a long-term thing. But I do think that a huge amount of agents are leaving probably YouTube and there's huge opportunities there for them. But I don't think it's just about putting up a property and going, here's a property. I think you need to put your personality across, and you have to put information that people will find useful. I think a lot of the stuff that I've put across is very much beneficial for people coming into the business as agents, or beneficial for people who are looking to come in from an investment point of view, and then just general kind of economic stuff. But I think there's no one out there really putting out any YouTube videos about what's the best way to sell your property, or what's the best way to get the most value. And like, those videos are easy enough to make in terms of just little tricks about turning on lights, cleaning bathrooms, removing, like there's lots of little tricks that people could make and put those YouTube videos out that I actually think that agents are missing and could definitely get lots of leads out there in Ireland, and because no one's doing it.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in what you just said there. How did you deal, Shane? And I know 2 more questions. How did you deal with the imposter syndrome that goes with it? I know sometimes you've got the butterflies, you've got the nerves as if you were going out on a championship final day or a cup match. I can see a few Mary's logos here in the. How have you dealt with it? Because let's be honest, you're running a business on your own. You're not in Ireland. You're putting out content that's trending. You're addressing issues. How did you deal with it?
I don't know. Realistically, people do have fear about being on camera. I do as well. But I think I've learned the hard way in terms of you learn from your mistakes. I'm dyslexic. I grew up in school. I found school incredibly difficult. In most classes, I excelled in a few subjects, but in most classes, I found quite difficult because I was dyslexic. So I learned the hard way, and I learned that you kind of have to put yourself out there and you have to take risks. And I think with putting out the YouTube videos or going on social media, you're taking a risk, but realistically, you're hoping that you're going to grow and get better all the time. When I actually put out a video yesterday, I think it was, just on a market update, and I was in my head when I was making the video, I was going to put out a clip from like a year or 18 months ago where I had predicted that something was going to happen, and just clip that in the way, like, I think Gary Vee does that all the time, where he clips in something he said a few years ago. I was like, I'm actually going to do that. I have a video from 2 years ago that, like, but then when I looked at that video, I looked how terrible that video was. Absolutely shockingly terrible that video was. And I was like, I don't want to clip this into a new video, because I've improved so much in that kind of year, 18-month period. And I think it definitely, it's a skill. It's not something that you're born with. I think, well, there is people who are born with those kind of skills, but it's not something I was born with. I'm definitely not good on camera. I don't think I'm great on camera, but I'm happy to keep pushing away and putting myself out there, because I think from a long-term point of view, I think it opens potential doors. Like, there's plenty of strange emails that I've got for different types of projects that I'm not in the position to take on, but at some stage that, like, I'll go, okay, well, that is something I want to actually do. And like, the only reason they reached out to me was because they saw me on YouTube.
Yeah, it's a very valuable point, and I definitely think you've improved. Geez, since I first met you 3 years ago in Ranelagh, I think looking at your videos then to now and hearing you speak today, you know, you've gone and done it. You know, you've quantified what you stand to lose, but not what you can. So, keep doing it, keep putting yourself out there, because there's not many in the industry who are, you know, I see the guys open the doors and showing the houses. I believe you have to start showing, you know, playing the right behavior on the appropriate channel. I just see so much, you know, wrong behavior on these mediums. The likes of LinkedIn, the likes of Instagram, like they're there to expose properties to wider audiences, yes, but the behavior behind it can allow you to become more entrusted, show guys that you've got resource behind you, and that you've got your profession. And the good and bad agents are easily found out on these mediums, very easily.
I don't come across as overly professional on my videos. I'm wearing a t-shirt here today, but like there are plenty of people who wear a suit, and that's who they are, and that's who they put themselves across as incredibly professional, and they will come across as reasonably professional. I think I started this about 2 years ago or so, like maybe Instagram videos before that, but the YouTube about 2 odd years ago. When I started, I definitely got slack. I got abuse. I got abuse from agents. Like I definitely did. Like, who is this guy? Who does he think he is? Why is he doing this? And blah blah. And I got a lot of slack for it. But I think perhaps it's not going to be as hard for anyone doing it now, because everyone understands that there's a reason why, and there's a benefit to it.
A very good point. Listen, Shane, we spoke for 42 minutes now. I know you've got a busy day ahead of you, and it's 4:45 here. So for us, thanks a million for jumping on. I'm going to leave Shane's LinkedIn. If anyone hasn't seen him, definitely check out his YouTube channel or his LinkedIn. And thanks for jumping on, Shane. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.